Hello and welcome to our property damage podcast series. Today we'll be discussing the impact modern methods of construction are having on repairs, and in particular in respect of fire claims. I'm Raphinder Jhinger, a solicitor here at BLM, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Beber, a major loss surveyor at QuestGates, chartered loss adjusters and claims specialists. Mike, hello and welcome to the podcast series.
Hi Raphinder, and thank you for the invite. As a bit of background, I'm a chartered building surveyor dedicated solely to advising and supporting the loss adjusters within the major loss department at QuestGates. My background, like many surveyors, comes from a variety of industries and projects, from project management of modular high-rise construction to all things insurance-based. I've worked as a chartered surveyor in the UK, Australia and New Zealand over the past 20 plus years.
Thank you for that, Mike. Looking at the way modern constructions are built compared to older traditional structures, these are very different, with a lot of production having shifted to factories, resulting in more modular type structures, which are separate blocks placed on top of each other, a bit like a Lego building. What are the main issues you are coming across when faced with repairing such modular structures following a fire?
Well, there are a number of issues which commonly present themselves when repairing modular type structures. The first being the trapping of water and fire debris between the modules, where fire extinguishment water has tracked through the structures, sometimes horizontally, and is causing damage in completely separate areas of the building to the fire, which is different to traditional. So it's difficult to fully identify where fire damage has spread, and a lot of the time investigations through opening up of ceilings and walls to check on damp levels or damage is the only way to fully identify where repairs are required. Another significant issue following a fire is the repairing of service runs and cabling through the modules. So one of the big advantages of modular construction is the quality control and the time saving that developers take advantage of when building modules inside a factory. The service ducts and the cable runs are a minimal size and very compact, which is a great advantage to the end user, however can provide difficulty in accessing these once the module has been installed and again is in place where debris can collect.
This is all adding new costs of repairs for insurers to consider. How does their construction affect the ability to repair a ceiling or part of a load-bearing wall?
Well, it does depend upon the final internal finish choices and the type of construction involved. However, it's common to find where walls and floors are formed of reinforced concrete panels with a cavity on the inside formed using either timber or an aluminium batten, and plasterboard for internal services. So where the ceiling is effectively the concrete floor to the level above, with a rendered finish, surface repairs are simple. However, where fire has caused significant damage to the concrete floor or the ceiling, and the reinforcement, so the structure has been compromised, this becomes a far more complicated repair.
Where specialist skills and knowledge will no doubt be needed, and again, increased costs for insurers. Looking at when you need to remove upper undamaged parts to access lower damaged sections, is there a risk of damage being caused to other undamaged parts of the building during removal?
So the short answer to this is yes. It is common where opening up works are required to the structural elements of the module. Some damage will occur to the framing or the structural element of the module, which has to be reinstated after the investigations are completed. And this can be complicated and require assistance from a structural engineer or a module design specialist.
What about where a building has settled? How does their construction affect repairs there?
So it's not unusual for a modular building to suffer from some level of settlement. And one area where this is commonly seen is the junctions of access modules for upper levels at lift cores, or where the emergency routes meet landings. It's fairly common to have movement joints at these junctions to take into account the expansion and contraction of the modules and their facades. However, in my experience, even with these expansion joints in place, it's fairly common to see some level of settlement cracking to the internal plasterboard surfaces. So this becomes more of a maintenance issue rather than a serious structural problem.
Is it difficult to obtain parts, as replacement parts for sometimes these bespoke constructions? Would a different component cause issues?
It can be difficult to obtain the exact replacement part where, for example, a kitchen design is not popular or has become out of stock and manufacturers just don't produce these after a certain date. Also, the advantage developers have when building large modular schemes is they can approach a kitchen or bathroom manufacturer directly and order a large number of units specifically to suit their development requirements, which may not be available after the project's been completed. So this can lead to complications with service connections and non-standard parts being sourced.
This again increases the risk of costs, as there may be a need to replace undamaged parts in order to ensure it's all the same kitchen unit or bath unit. Are you seeing longer repair times for these types of construction?
Well, I don't think it's a specific problem with modular construction, as more of an industry problem with repair times and delays from sourcing materials. There can be issues with identifying the extent of repairs and also if specific equipment has been installed. For example, where a specific building management system has been damaged during a fire and parts for this are only available from a European manufacturer. This can cause delays with availability and importing problems.
What do insurers need to be aware of when insuring these types of buildings or dealing with a fire claim? And is there anything they could do to minimise the issues being experienced?
I think it will be essential for insurers to understand the construction and the design implications of a modular building on the insurance levels. So understanding the methods of repairing the facades and specific service installations within a development is crucial to anticipating the possible costs involved with repairing part or whole of a modular building. An example of this will be a fire on the 12th floor of a high-rise modular block where the fire has compromised both the cladding and fire breaks to the module. How can this be repaired without a full scaffold system in place and an understanding of how the extinguishment water has moved down through the building or the cladding system, not to mention how the fire containment has performed and how this can be repaired. So a building's location and its construction and an understanding of how this will affect the costs involved with a claim is also a major consideration for insurers. For example, many developers have high-rise modular projects in densely populated areas, and delivery of materials and waste disposal can be designed into the scheme while the crane is on top of the central core. However, once the crane has been removed at the end of the project, the logistics of repairing the building then becomes a bit of a strategic problem and usually a very costly exercise.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. What is clear is that insurers need to have a better understanding at inception and renewal of the building it may be insuring and have to take into consideration the extra cost of repairing not only the damaged parts, but the risk of claims being made for damage caused to undamaged parts of a building. An insured will need to be able to provide more in-depth details about the structure and its parts. Mike, thank you again for your time. I find your knowledge from a loss adjuster's perspective to be very informative and valuable, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same. Our property damage podcast series on methods of constructions will include more points of discussion relating to fire claims, with episodes including conversations around timber frame buildings, domestic properties, eco properties, and modern facades. It would be great to hear your observations and comments on the content of this episode. So please send them through to us at propertydamage@blmlaw.com. That's propertydamage@blmlaw.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen in our conversation today. We hope you will tune in for our next podcast.